Hi, it's Kathy with City Farmhouse Studio. Today I want to share with you the pattern for this Winter Windows knit beanie hat. The link to the pattern is in the description below. So for this pattern, I did do the Premier Wool Select Easy Care Wool Blend. This is the yarn that I use for the Winter in the City sweater. 273 yards, 250 meters to the 3.5 ounce 100 gram ball. It is a 75% acrylic, 25% wool, a category 3 light yarn. Now, of course, this yarn has been discontinued because everyone that I like, they discontinue. However, I have seen online Paint Box Yarns has a 75% acrylic, 25% wool blend, very similar looking characteristics. That could be a good substitute. I did get 12 wraps per inch on this. Premier Fair's Cotton Fair yarn is also 12 wraps per inch. It does give different stitch definition because it's more cotton, where this wool structure does kind of fluff up and give a different texture to the knit structure. In the description below, I have listed other alternatives for this yarn. So I have started with waste yarn and ravel cord. My carriage is at the right to my gauge tension. My row count is to 0. And I will begin with an E-wrap. So all that is going between the first and second needle on your left and wrapping it over the needle. Coming between the second and third, wrapping it over. Going between the third and fourth, wrapping over the third needle. And you just keep on proceeding. And you want to have it tight enough to touch the needle, and I go around the open latch, but you don't want it so tight that it will struggle to knit off. And then go ahead and push all of those back behind the latches. And you want to reference the pattern now. So it says to follow the pattern chart for 8 repeats and to leave both end stitches as knit stitches. And that is because these will be seamed together, and so these will disappear, and then your patterns for the knit hat will be what is in between them. So these are your selvage, essentially. So since this is a chart, you're going to go all the way down to the bottom, and you can see from row 1 to row 3, they are identical in stitch structures. So if you have a ribber, you could set up your ribber to work with this ribbing pattern. However, with an LK150, everything needs to be done by hand. So I am going to go ahead and knit the 3 rows so that we can then hand transfer those purl stitches. Okay, so then you take your latch tool, and again we're going to keep this stitch as a knit, but the second one over, you can see from the column that first stitch has the dot, so that's a purl. So we want to go down 1, 2, 3 stitches, so that will put us in that first wrap that we did for the E-wrap. We're going to drop those stitches out and pull them out. That first stitch is always kind of tricky with the E-wrap. We want to make sure our latch hook is open, and we're going to latch back up through the ravel cord in the E-wrap. That was the first row, our second row, and our third row, and we go back in. Now looking at the chart, we're going to skip 1 stitch, and we're going to drop the next 2. We'll skip 1, drop the next 2, skip 1, drop the next 2, skip 1 more, and then we will drop 1 more. And this is to create the repeat for the 12 stitch pattern. So once you complete these 12 stitches, you're going to repeat transferring those again, where we add 1 more. So that's like the stitch 1, skip one, add two, skip one, and continue all the way down till we end with a purl and leaving with one stitch open for our seam. So I will go ahead and start transferring. You go into the latch where the E-wrap was, that bottom stitch, drop it. You can work from right to left or left to right, and sometimes taking off the cast-on comb will help you so you can get underneath and hold it as you insert your latch tool. It also helps you pull down to work those stitches out. We're skipping one, go on to the next one. So once you have everything transferred, ending with the one purls, the one set that you transferred, and then the one knit stitch at the very end, we're to the section where you work on your cables. And for this, you just knit one row. So once you've knit the row, we're to where we need to knit the cables. And we know from the directions that this first edge stitch will be a knit stitch, so we never mess with it. In the chart, this first stitch will need to transfer to a purl, and once we complete the row, that's whenever I do all the purls. And then the next two stitches are for the cable. So I take my transfer tools, single prong, and I'm going to take them off. Now this first one that we create is going to be a left leaning. So we want to take the left and place that first, and then the right. So since we are seeing the back side of the fabric, it's going to look like a right leaning cable, but on the front side of the fabric, it will be left. Then the next two stitches, we need to do the reverse. So we do the right stitch and then the left stitch. And then we're going to continue the two purls, and we repeat that on down the line. Cross left, cross right for that one set of cable, cross right, and then cross left. And then we have one of the purls, but we start our new repeat, so we again have one purl. So from here on out, you can essentially do two purls, a left cable, a right cable, two purls, a left cable, a right cable. So back to my cables, doing the left first, and the right. Oh, that's left. And then 2 pearls. So I just did my last cable, and here I always check that all of my cables are moving in the right direction, and I have those 2 pearl spaces, because it's way easier to correct it now than after you knit a row. Now we need to go back and do the pearls. So just like before, you just go down the 1 space because we just have the 1 stitch that we need to transfer. I dropped down too many. No, I have. And then we skip the 4 needles with the cables. Drop the 2 stitches for the pearls. From here on out, you'll be able to do larger sections of pearls. So this is the only one where you have the 1. You could technically just do the pearls that are below the cables and then wait to transfer all these columns at this row, but that for me is more options to mess up. And then the last pearl, the last repeat. And we're ready to knit row 5 to do the second row of cables. So row 5, you'll notice there's nothing really different. It's just how we skipped 1 stitch before, well, we skipped the knit stitch and then the 1 purl and then did the 2 cables. We're moving the cables out 1 stitch in each direction so that the 2 purls are now between those cables. So for the first one, I'm missing the 1 for the knit stitch and repeat the left first and then the right. Now I'm skipping the 2 stitches that will become purl. These will be the right stitches. So right goes first and then the left. And then we don't have purls on this next group because we were moving them. So the left goes first and the right. 2 purls, right, and then left. And then we start the group again with the left. Skip my 2 purls, right. So we're essentially moving how we had the angle of the first row of cables. We're continuing that angle out. The next section will be a group of purl columns, and then we'll begin into other cables, and those will keep moving them in, columns, move them out. So it's just these same stitches, but in different, need the left first, but just different placements within the rows, so that as you're looking at it in a complete grouping over all the rows, you'll see the cables creating the shapes. Again, I want to make sure everything looks right before I continue on. Now on row 4, we went ahead and transferred these purl stitches to be purls. But if you look, this column of purls go all the way up to row 11 to row 12. So that is our next cable row. So we could just drop all of those rows down and purl at once and save us some time. So I'm going to knit until my row counter is on row 12. So now once you get to row 12, you can either go ahead and transfer those stitches or do the cables first. I like doing cables first. I create a pattern so that I stick with it. So for the cables, you'll see that first stitch is still the same, and then we go here, but instead of it being a left crossing needle first, it is a right. And then we skip the 2 stitches for purls, and then we cross left. Which that puts us right next to a right cable. Skip 2. Left. So the section of cables before essentially had those columns moving out. This section is having them move in. Another option to keep all of this straight is go through to all of your right cables and skip 4 stitches in between each one, and then go through and do all of your left cables, skipping 4 stitches in between each one. Whichever way your mind works to create the pattern, checking that these cables meet in the center, the 2 edge move out, and then we need to go ahead and do the purls. So we need to drop down 8 rows, which goes into the back of that cable. We'll drop that line down. We need the next one, so that crossed for the cable, so we'll drop that stitch down all the way into that. We have our cables, so those stay. Now we need to come down this column. You can count 8, find that back side of the cable. So there I've gone ahead and transferred all the purls, and you'll go ahead and knit one row and keep transferring those cables back towards each other and then move them back out. So keep paying attention to what row you are and which direction those cables need to move. And then eventually you get up to the top of the crown, which is where you need to start decreasing them in. And this section is not complicated, it is fiddly. So we need to make decreases every 12 stitches, one going in from both directions, 12 stitches moving in, and then move everything all together in the center. There isn't a tool to do this that is very easy. A garter bar may help you if you have one. I've used transfer tools and I got it done. You just gotta be patient. So I've gone ahead and knit 2 rows just so that I don't have those cables that I'm transferring for the decreases. And what you will begin is, again, you keep the 1 knit stitch. The second stitch you move over. So that's our stitch 1. Now we need to find 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we want to move that in. Now we need to repeat that. So we're going to move this stitch over. You can use your math from your stitches. I've divided in half. You'll be up to 12. And then we want to move that stitch. Again, 12 stitches, 1, 2, 3. So there you can see, that is very easy to do, but if we knit like this with these out of work, we're still going to get a long float, and that's not what we want. So you just start with your transfer tools, moving these stitches in. Now as you're moving, this 1 stitch isn't too bad with the 1 repeats, but you're going to have multiple openings throughout your line. And about 2, maybe 3 is about as far as the needles over you can move. So you're going to have to move some over, move the rest over, move some over, move the rest over, and just keep inchworming all those decreases together to where you end up with nothing, all the stitches in work all together. So here I'm trying to just move that by itself, and I can't even move it 3 inches, 3 stitches. So I'll move those 2 together and then move these 2 over. So there, I've made my decreases and I've moved them together, and I want to knit 4 rows. So now I'm to the next set of decreases. And remember I had 12 stitches before, but we decreased 2 on each of those sections. So now we're down to 10 on our repeat. So count over 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want each side of that sections be decreased. And again, we need to scrunch them all together and inchworm them together however you can. Back and forth, moving them all closer together till they all touch. Making sure all those stitches we aren't in use will be out of work. I did forget to mention that the columns you will need to still purl. So you keep on inching up until you are left with only 2 stitches per 12. So you are down to 16 stitches. So once you are complete, just cut your tail and put it on either a tapestry needle or your blunt-eyed seaming needle. What I do is from the front side of each stitch, you go through, pull each one off. You will only have 16 at the top of the hat. And then when you pull it all together, we'll close this sock cap, and then you can even use these ends to sew in that side seam. So when you are complete, you are left with a tight little circle. And then seaming, the seam is right there, but it is invisible from the outside of the fabric. Thank you for watching. I hope you really enjoy this Winter Windows knit hat. Please like and subscribe so you never miss out on any other great patterns or tutorials from City Farmhouse Studio. Thanks again. Bye.